Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Disney Q&A, the series in which you guys ask me questions, all manner of Disney related, and I answer them to the best of my ability. We're walking around on MC Magic today, the one-to-one scale recreation of Disney World within the game of Minecraft, and we're just going to dive right in and start answering questions. I got a bunch here from YouTube and a few from Twitter. So kicking it off today, from Twitter, we have Chandler Ammon, who asks, do you think they should do more Toy Story stuff? Interesting question. Honestly, I'm gonna say no. I don't. Here's my take on it. We've got Toy Story Midway Mania, really great. We've got Buzz Lightyear Space Ranger Spin, really great. That's 2 attractions for a trilogy of films, and I think, you know, when you consider that some films out there have no attractions, I think 2 is pretty good. I don't think we really need to see a whole lot more. I mean, back when Toy Story was even bigger and more, you know, popular and more novel, you saw more of it, like at the time MGM Studios, they had a Toy Story parade, things like that. Now, there are rumors that we are going to see more Toy Story stuff in specifically Hollywood Studios to coincide with Toy Story 4 as it's produced and put out there. Don't know if that's true or not. Might be possible. You know, you have the Backlot Tour, which is closing, which is closed already. And that is sort of right near Pixar Place, so there are rumors that they're going to expand on Pixar Place, and that part of that expansion would be something new Toy Story related. So you might see it, but, you know, I'd be fine if we didn't, to be honest. Our next question, we actually have a couple here. We have Refrigerated, who asks, what is the reason for bringing down the hat? And we have Blake, who says, what would you replace the hat with at Hollywood Studios? And then you have RU7 Keep Choppin', who asks, being that the hat is coming down on the 7th, what would you replace it with? So yes, the hat, the Mickey Sorcerer Apprentice hat in Hollywood Studios, is going to be taken down starting this week. They never said how long it's going to take for it to be taken down. They haven't said why they're doing it. They haven't said what they're putting in its place, if anything. Now, so everything going forward I'm about to say is like just speculation. And my guess is they're taking it down because they're sort of not rebranding Hollywood Studios, but they're giving it a refreshing boost in the arm, right? They closed down Backlot Tour, they're closing down Indiana Jones, American Idol, they're putting in Star Wars attractions, there's this rumored Pixar stuff you're going to see there. It seems like they're trying to really give it a new, fresh coat of paint, especially to coincide with, like, Star Wars coming out, and Indiana Jones is a series that they, you know, now might continue. I think part of that is changing the icon of the park. Now, what are they going to replace it with? I don't know. They haven't said anything. There are no plans specifically. Personally speaking, I'd rather see them replace it with nothing. I think the Chinese theater behind it was a great icon for MGM Studios. I think it's a great icon for Hollywood Studios, and I would love to see it become the icon again. I think the park is supposed to signify film as a whole. It's about movies and the movie industry and film industry, and I think short of making a fake mountain with the Hollywood sign, you know, that's a great icon. The Chinese theater is a great, famous icon of the film industry. And part of the reason I wasn't a fan of the hat, besides the fact that it was just basically a gift shop, was that it was more of an icon for Disney film when the park was really supposed to be about film as a whole. So I'm glad to see it going. I can't wait. I mean, by the time I go down there again, it'll be gone, and I can't wait to be able to look down from the entrance and see the Chinese theater again. I'm really excited, and I kind of hope that it just stays that way. Our next question comes from Handsome Gent, who asks, I talked about Hollywood Studios retheming, so I have a question about Epcot. Do you think Epcot's theme gets mixed up? I thought it was about the future, but it has different pavilions based on life and the world. On top of that, there's World Showcase, where you see all the different countries. To me, Epcot seems sort of confused on what to do or what to build, and the new Frozen rides, it gets characters in the park, which is more confusing. I don't think it went off. I mean, I think it partially has gone off theme. Now, to address the later part of your question, Epcot from day one as a theme park was always half of World Showcase, half Future World. So that, I don't think, is a confusion of theme there. The idea was half of it was going to be this sort of persistent, you know, 24/7, 365 World's Fair type expo. And then the Future World part was also supposed to be somewhat like a World's Fair expo, except, you know, similar to the New York World's Fair. Part of it was about teaching people about different cultures, and part of it was about teaching people about what exciting stuff we're going to see in the future. Now, I think in terms of the way you structure it, I don't think it's really off theme. I think part of Future World isn't just purely technology and future, it's the future and technology regarding different walks of life. You have, you know, the land pavilion and how the future and technology is going to affect the world we live in, the physical, you know, geological world we live in. There's, you know, the future in health, and that's what the, you know, the Wonders of Life pavilion was supposed to sort of be. And you have transportation with the, you know, the test track pavilion, or I guess the transportation pavilion, things like that. So it makes sense, right? The living seas, all of these different aspects are different ways to look at how technology is going to affect our future going forward. Now, that said, I do think it's gone a little bit off theme. I think they've sort of traded in what I like to consider the intellectual thrills of rides like Horizons and World of Motion with things like Test Track and Mission Space, which are more physical thrills. I think it has gone off course in that sense, in that there's less of a focus on the future and what we're going to expect from it, and more, you know, basic rides with a futuristic, you know, coat of paint, which I think is a little shallow. And, you know, to be honest, that's sort of the whole reason I started that Revisiting Disney series that you have on my channel right now, is because I remember sitting down and thinking, wow, I could pick out every attraction in Epcot, in, you know, the future world, and talk about what I think they need to do to get it on course. And then it just sort of went from there to playing around with every attraction. But yeah, I do think in that sense it's sort of gone off path a little bit. But, you know, as a core structure of, you know, World Showcase Future World, I think that's fine. And as for characters being in the park, I mean, that goes way back. Epcot did launch without any characters in the parks. No Mickey, no Donald, no Goofy. But once Eisner stepped in, he saw that and he thought it was ridiculous, because people go to Disney because they love these characters. And that's when you start to see those characters implemented into it. And then you see, you know, things like Donald Duck and the Three Caballeros in Mexico. And so I don't think it's too weird to see characters in the park. And I mean, the whole Norway Frozen thing is a whole other topic for a whole other video. And I've spoken about it when the announcement was made, but I don't think it's a bad thing. Our next question comes from Jay Jelka, who asks, do you think Disney World's Haunted Mansion will get a Christmas update / Halloween like Disneyland and Disneyland Tokyo? Short answer, no, I don't think they will, but I would love to see it happen. I mean, I have no reason to believe either way. The only thing I can think of is that they've been doing it for so long in Disneyland and they haven't done it yet in Disney World, so I don't know why they would start. But it would be totally cool to see, as long as it's unique and different. I'd be down for that. Our next question comes from a DVC member, Magical Root Beer, who asks, do you think classics such as Space Mountain and Splash Mountain are at an equal risk of replacement as other rides? No, definitely don't. And I think part of that is the history of the attraction, for sure. But you also have to realize, I think at the end of the day, what's going to push Disney into replacing or refurbishing attraction is essentially how it's performing, right? And performance for them is measured by how many people get through the ride, how many people go to the ride, because they want as many people riding these attractions as possible. And just inherently, by being a classic like Space Mountain, it's going to be ridden more than, say, you know, perhaps something a little less of a classic like, I can't even really think of one. Everything sort of falls in the Buzz Lightyear Space Ranger Spin, for instance. There's a good one where I feel like maybe it's losing steam a little bit. So I think that's part of it. I do think if, say, a classic, I mean, because we could, you know, you listed off Splash Mountain, Space Mountain, those are popular classics, but there are unpopular classics too. Tomorrowland Speedway has been there for such a long time, and I feel like that would be more at risk of being replaced than other rides. So I guess maybe I should go back on that answer and say, no, I don't think it's more or less at risk. Really, what it boils down to is how successful is the attraction being. I don't think a ride is above being refurbished, and that's a good thing. I feel like, you know, it hurts me a little bit whenever I see people get so upset when an attraction's announced to be refurbed or replaced, because Walt always wanted these parks to be evolving and changing and growing and becoming a new thing and something that never ends, and part of that's replacing something that's old. And that doesn't mean, you know, you have to hate the attraction. Look, I'm you know, I'm about to poke the hornet's nest, but I'm kind of glad Maelstrom's going. That was an old ride. It was entertaining at the time, but it's sort of worn out its welcome, at least in my opinion, and I was ready for something else to be put in its place. So, you know, I wasn't upset when they announced that. Not upset about the, you know, great movie ride or the backlot tour. You know, all of these refurbs and closures are great because Disney is doing something with it. This isn't like they're closing an attraction and just leaving an empty lot forever. You know, something new is going to be put there, and that is the potential for something exciting. So I'm excited for it. Our next question comes from Inferno Squad. Nope, Inferno Squid, who asks, what is your opinion on the transition between Tomorrowland and Fantasyland? In my opinion, it's a bit too jarring. For other transitions like Adventureland to Frontierland, the pirate area helps slowly change. But going from Tomorrowland to Fantasyland, you go past the Speedway and you go straight to the teacups. I think there's even an exit from the Starlight Cafe that dumps right over to the teacups. Have you noticed this? And do you think it is an issue? How might you change it? Granted, total control over Imagineering. That's a very interesting question. So, yes, I agree with you in that I think it's the most direct transition. You know, Disney's typically really good at making it very subtle. And it's funny because I was showing my buddy Steve this, and we were looking at an overhead map of the Magic Kingdom, and you can see a lot of times they'll use very sharp turns to sort of create this divide so that you turn a corner and you're like going from one area to another. And because you're not seeing both at the same time, it makes it an easier transition on the brain. But yeah, you don't see that here. It just sort of transitions over. I don't think it's an issue. I think, you know, it's great when Imagineers think of this stuff and try to make it as seamless as possible, but I don't think it's the sort of thing that's going to degrade the quality of the park or your experience or anything like that, or kill the magic at all. I think we all know in the back of our minds these are separate lands and we're walking from one to the other. As for what I would do to like sort of improve it, I guess there's really not a lot more than just putting stuff in between, right? The idea is less about making it a gradual transition and more about preventing you from seeing one area from the other. That's where the disconnect comes from, at least in my opinion, is that, you know, you walk into Tomorrowland, you turn around and you see Fantasyland or vice versa. That's where it creates that divide, as opposed to, you know, something like going from Frontierland to Liberty Square, where you can turn a corner Frontierland to Adventureland, where you could turn a corner and boom, you're in this new area. And it's a stark difference, but because you turn around and you see a wall as opposed to the whole other area, it sort of makes it feel more seamless. So that's what I would do, but I don't think it's a problem. Our next question comes from Copycat705, who asks, what is your least favorite resort and restaurant? Boy, I'm not a big fan of like focusing on the negatives, so like least favorites. That's why people have always asked like do a top 5 or top 5 worst rides or top 5 worst hotels, and it's like I don't want to do that. You know, if it's not my favorite, I just don't talk about it as much. I guess though, if you're gonna make me throw one out there, my least favorite resort out of the resorts I've been to and stayed at, it would have to be Coronado. And that's because it feels the least like a Disney resort. And it wasn't a bad resort. It was fine. And it's one of those things where it's like, you're still at Disney, so it doesn't, you know, ruin my stay at all. But it did feel the least. And that makes sense. It's sort of like the unofficial convention resort at Disney when they hold conventions there. It's the most neutral, I think. It's got some nice theming, but it's not very wild or out there. So funny enough, it's like one of Christine's favorite resorts, which is weird. I find it weird. As for a restaurant, that one's tough because I don't think I really have a least favorite. I mean, if you want to talk about Disney property, I went to Planet Hollywood once and it didn't really do it for me, so I guess that maybe Planet Hollywood. But the restaurants are tough to pin because, like I've said in many videos, I don't go to those restaurants for the food. It's not the food quality, it's really the theming. And so they all have like awesome themes, and they're all like themes I love diving myself into. You know, I feel like if something doesn't appeal to me, I just won't eat there. So I can't really stand and say it's my least favorite because I've never eaten there. I'm cautious. Our next question comes from Alligator Train 422, who asks, have you heard about the new Disney Junior show, Miles from Tomorrowland? It seems pretty neat. In the trailer, it shows the kids in a spaceship going on these adventures in the Tomorrowland Transit Authority. what are your thoughts on the show? Do you think that Disney is pushing out more stuff based on the parks now? As you mentioned, there kind of a lot of stuff in the works in the past few years. What do you think why do you think they are suddenly making all the products based on the parks? So I looked up the trailer for this, Miles from Tomorrowland. It is a Disney Junior show, so it is, I feel like, very catered towards younger viewers. Not the kind of thing I feel like I would watch, but it's cool. It's one of those things, though, where it's a name only as far as I can tell. Yes, the ship is called the TTA, and there's a mention of, what was it, rocket jets or space jets, or there was a jets reference in there, that Astro Jets. And it's got Tomorrowland in the title, but I feel like that's it. There's nothing really about it that references the part of the park. It's probably some really like basic cross promotion. But even then, it's hard to call it like cross promotion, because I don't think the idea is that, you know, they're going to walk away and connect the two, that Tomorrowland and this Tomorrowland. The real question is, where does this Miles from Tomorrowland play into the movie Tomorrowland? Because now you have two, you know, a movie and a show that both use the same name like that. Are they going to play in together? Is this going to tie into the world somehow, even if it's a very minor way? That's what I'm interested in seeing. I don't think they're doing much more of this than usual. I mean, yes, there's talk of a Magic Kingdom movie, and there's Tomorrowland the movie, though we don't know how much it ties into the park. Possibly not a whole lot. I think it's just part of Iger's plan to keep everything, you know, connected through this web, because it creates this one brand. And our last question this week comes from Lemurs18, who just says, talk about Agent Carter on ABC. I don't know what to talk about. I saw the clip. It looks cool. I'm looking to check it out. I'm excited for it. I will say this, and people will probably dislike me for it, but like, I tried to get into Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and I just couldn't get into it. And I feel like I gave it a fair shake too. I watched like 11 or 12 episodes, and I just couldn't be driven to keep watching. It just didn't grab me. But this, I think, has a better chance, just because it's a period film, or a period show, takes place in the past. It's got Howard Stark is involved, which is cool, because he's sort of supposed to be an amalgam of, you know, Howard Hughes and Walt Disney a little bit, and he's just like all of these old people from the past put together into this character. So it'll be interesting to see how they develop him. And Agent Carter, it's funny because when you first mentioned this, you're like, talk about Agent Carter, and I knew that there's a show coming out called Agent Carter, but I didn't know anything about it, and I had forgotten that Agent Carter was from the whole Captain America world universe. So I just assumed it was like a spin-off from one of the agents from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or something. And so I wasn't really psyched because I had built that up. And then I watched the trailer and I'm like super into it. Because, you know, I think my favorite part of the Marvel universe is Captain America in the 40s. Because I don't know. I like the past. I think it's interesting, and it'll be interesting to see how it plays out, because a period show or a period production of any kind, movie or show, is just a lot harder to pull off. And you saw, I don't know if it was ABC or another network, maybe CBS, but they tried to do Pan Am, which took place in the past, and because it costs more, there's higher risks involved. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. Anyway, thank you all for the questions. It's been a fantastic week. If you have a question you would like me to answer, feel free to leave it in the comments below or throw it my way at Twitter. I'm at RobPlays. Thank you for watching. Whatever you're doing this week, make the most of it, because it makes it that much better. And I hope to see you next time for the next episode of the Disney Q&A. I think we're just going to call it that from now on. Disney Q&A. Simple. Nice and simple. Bye, everybody.